Welcome to another edition of the Willy Bragg Show. I'm your host, Willy Bragg, and once again, I'm bringing back, I would say, one of my favorites here. I really do mean that.
That's so
Jen,
nice.
yeah, I really do mean that. Jen Perelman, how are you doing today?
I am good. Thank you for having me back.
Absolutely, absolutely, and I'm telling you, your show, Generational Change, has been you got great guests, and y'all just been really doing wonderful lately. I mean, just yeah, y'all getting better and better.
I appreciate that.
Yeah.
We during the campaign we had to shift things a little bit, and Peter had to fly solo for a while, and now we're getting back into it. But yeah, we're growing, and we're doing some things to help with that. But overall, we just have a lot more time now that the campaign is over to kind of like refocus on the podcast.
Yeah, and I usually am listening most nights. If I'm not on the chat line, I'm usually driving on my way to work. I'm listening to it on the phone, and all that, and listening to it while I'm at work. Just as I said, I'm a pretty faithful listener to it. Your show, and there's a couple other shows that are like my main staples. And
I appreciate that because I know how I feel about the shows that are my main things. And like, for example, one of those is Jamarl Thomas. And he's one of the people that I started listening to back in like, we're talking 2014, 20, like way a long time ago. And so when like, to me, it's really nice because he's one of my favorites. And it's so nice that that is something that somebody else sees us. We're having a great guest Thursday night. We're having Margaret Kimberly on. So, and we're going to talk about with her. I feel like I could talk about anything. But yeah, that she's just amazing to talk to.
yes. So anyway, yes. The it's just like the ideology. I mean, yeah. Gosh, I don't like to use the word ideology like that because it sounds so, whatever. The core values of the show. That's probably a better way to put it. Is right in sync with my core value system. And so it's like kind of speaking my language a whole lot. So and I
Yeah,
really
we're an interesting combination of like prioritizing the least of these while also very much supporting civil liberties and going at everything with reason and not out of fear. And it's really that method, which is why I have so many like I'm sure you've seen in our chat, we have total conservatives. I've got Republicans, I've got like anarchists, Second Amendment enthusiasts. Like I've got a lot of people in there. And that to me is one of the coolest things about what we're doing. And it really shows that what we stand for, really, if we took off the labels, appeals to most people. That's what I think. I think that if you took off all the labels and most people that weren't like, let's say, overly religious, watched our podcast, they would think it was completely reasonable. That's what I think.
Yeah, as I said, what appeals to me is with the basic economics, like the class reductionist economics, but the commitment to civil liberties at the same time. It's the left that I was very familiar with for many years that seemed to have waned away, and there is a community out there, and it's great to have these forums because it makes you feel like you're not like the crazy person around. What
Yeah.
have you? Yeah.
That's
So
very important to me. That's one of the reasons I go on the lives that I go on, like as a chatter. Like my two regulars that I watch live are Punch Up and Tim Black, where I'm familiar with the people in the chat, and there is it's very nice. It's very comforting during these times when so many of us in real life are surrounded by people. Like in my life, I don't know who supports genocide and who doesn't. I'm just walking around like, and it's very lonely. So it is nice, I think, in these communities for people across the political spectrum to find solace with other reasonable people.
absolutely, absolutely. So we had an election just now. I guess you probably noticed that too,
Oh yeah.
and sadly, we don't have we neither have a President Cornel West nor a President Jill Stein. We ended up with Donald Trump coming back into the White House in January, and I tell you the truth, and I feel the same way about Kamala Harris. People ask me where I stand on the election. I said I'm neither delighted nor disappointed, because honestly, and some people have a problem with this concept. Sometimes the two main candidates do not address any of your core concerns, and that was the case with Trump and Kamala Harris. Yes, Trump is off the chain, right wing, and in every reasonable way, and I mean, I think a lot of it's barking, but some of it is what it is. And in the words of Breonna Joy Gray, you had basically Kamala Harris bumping fists with Dick Cheney and Liz Cheney. So,
yeah.
Kind of evens itself out there.
Yeah. We know you can't even reason that. That's the problem. Okay. But I started noticing the merge. I mean, I think you did too. We've all noticed the merge right, at this point, the Democrats are right of center. They're right of Reagan. So this is not in any means left. We do not have a left party that has power. Okay. I mean, yeah, you've got Greens, you've got something, but I mean, really. And so that's the problem that we're having. But the way I say it is, I am not happy that Donald Trump won, but I am very pleased that Kamala Harris lost. I actually do not agree that she's the lesser of those two evils. The only thing that I agree on is that they're both evil. They're both evil. I actually voted Stein. Dr. West was not on my ballot. And I also am sort of fangirling over Butch Ware right now. So that was sort of the direction that I went. Donald Trump is exactly what we know he is. The one thing about him that I prefer is he says the shit out loud that you're not supposed to say out loud. Where they're all doing the same stuff. And I actually appreciate that. It's when you say we're in Syria for the oil, thank you. I appreciate your candor. And so I do like that. I feel like they're just wolves, whereas the Democrats are just, wolves in sheep's clothing. Right. So I guess I would just rather see the enemy and let everyone else see the enemy. Whereas if you put in another neoliberal term, which could be 8 years, I don't know that we could withstand that. And make no mistake, I absolutely 1,000% believe that Hillary Clinton is still in charge. I think she bought the Democratic Party. I think Kamala was like her horse in the race since 2017. And that she has been behind the scenes the entire time manipulating how to get Kamala in the White House, because that's her puppet. That's her Manchurian candidate. And I cannot think of anything more horrifying. And I know that people with Trump derangement syndrome don't get this because they just cannot see past their feelings. But when you look at facts, history, empirical evidence, and actual what has happened, I think that 8 years of potential Clintonism is infinitely worse than 4 years of whatever Trump is going to do. I actually don't think that we would be able to survive 8 years of Clintonism.
Well, we went through 8 years of Bill Clinton, and I in my 20s, I saw the country going in my 20s, early 20s in college. I saw it right there. I was maligned by the college Democrats. They hated my guts. They thought I was they was like, you're a socialist. And then when the Republicans took over Congress in 1994, I said, well, I guess I must be a socialist. I started subscribing to the Progressive magazine, and then I just,
you saw the writing on the wall.
Yeah, I sure did. I mean,
yeah. And that's who it still is. That should be what concerns people.
I saw the writing on the wall when they didn't want to endorse Harvey Gantt to challenge Jesse Helms, but wanted to endorse a corporate Democrat, the CEO of a pharmaceutical called GlaxoSmithKline. I don't know if you ever heard of that company.
No.
Yeah, I don't know if they're still around, but they were like, and I was like, no, I want Harvey Gantt. No, we gotta go. We gotta go centrist. We gotta go centrist. I'm like, y'all can go centrist. I don't want to go centrist, And I didn't. I ended up voting for Ralph Nader the following year, and just kind of been in that direction since then, and
You're one of those people that just accepts the life of never having your people in elected positions, because that's how I am too.
Yeah, yeah, and I'm used to it. I've gone to I've come to the conclusion of, well, I'm just going to be stubborn, because I don't want to play patty cake with a system that is so cruel and unjust, and I
Yeah.
won't.
That's how I feel. And at the end of the day, I have to be able to sleep at night. And what I support and the message I put out there, and, especially having a platform, it's very important to me to put that out there. So, yeah, I understand people's strategy, and I understand people go with the lesser of two evil and the harm reduction in the LGBTQ community. And I get all of those things. I really do. But at the end of the day, we have to look beyond that at the big picture of the class war that we're living in. And we really have to see what's going on. And we cannot reward a party that is currently committing a genocide. Like, we just cannot. We cannot reward a party that thinks that campaigning with Liz Cheney makes more sense than campaigning with Bernie Sanders. That's just not something that we can reward. And as far as I'm concerned, they're not, like, I used to just think they've just lost their way. Like, they need to be pulled further to the left. And at this point, I just don't even care about it anymore. I don't care about the Democrats. Every time they've argued to go to the center, like what you're saying, every single time, all that's done is pull them all the way to the right, which is where they are. And at this point, they don't offer anything other than they're the wolf in the sheep's clothing. They're more pleasant. And the people with Trump derangement syndrome that get their panties all in a bunch because he makes them uncomfortable and hurts their feelings, but they don't bother to do an ounce of research to look at, if you were to look at what Joe Biden has done with the wall, with immigration, and all the things that he never, what he's continued in Israel even before October 7th last year. But they don't, because it's bad if Trump does it, but it's okay if Joe does it. And those people are now having to be uncomfortable. And that pleases me. That pleases me.
Yeah. I'm not quite the Jimmy Dore fan that I used to be. But I will say this about him. He was correct when he said years ago, I think it was in 2018, when Joe Biden was putting that medal around George W. Bush's neck, and Michelle Obama was sitting there hugging on him and everything. Mm-hmm. And he said that that liberals hated Ralph Nader because he supposedly gave us George W. Bush. Now that the liberals love George W. Bush, they still hate Ralph Nader. Hey, he's right.
He is. It just goes to show you. I mean, they're so privileged, and they're just so in their own ass. Like, I can't. These people are so out of touch with reality, and it is a very privileged group of people. It is. I've come to that realization. The people that are like that about with the Trump derangement syndrome, they're all people with privilege. I don't know if you've noticed that.
No, I have. And as I said, like, for example, when January 6th took place, I mean, one, I thought it was a clown show. I laugh at it. I tell people I laugh at it. But what made me angry about it was there was also an excuse to scrap healthcare. The talk of force the vote, it was just quickly forgotten. And the opportunity to sit there and to pressure Nancy Pelosi to allow a House vote on Medicare for all, we wouldn't have gotten that. But I think we could have gotten something out of Nancy Pelosi, tangible, lowering Medicare eligibility down to 50. Prescription drug reforms, Medicare, Medicaid expansion of some sort, or something. She would have given them something. And, and I have seen the squad just disappoint me. And I used to be the biggest cheerleader that you can imagine. And right now, I don't know. I don't know what to do, because it's like the third party movement. I guess I'll continue to vote third party, but I know it leads to nowhere, and I know that voting for the Democrats will also lead to nowhere.
Yeah, I think that the moral of the story is that voting really is not the effective means of revolution, right? So it is one of the things that we have, but it's also the thing that is sort of like, it's contrived. It's the way of the haves, the powers that be, to create a facade of a system where you have a choice. It gives you the idea that you have some semblance of choice. They get to say this is a democracy when in fact we know it's an oligarchy at best. And so, we know that only 0.00% of whatever of the people get their will, their policies, their issues dealt with in our people's house. So I just think in general, electoral politics is just, the mask is really off. I think people, and I'm not even just talking about election interference and voter suppression and all that. That stuff's all real too. I am talking about the fact that regular, normal people are never going to be in a position to run for the powerful positions because of the way the whole system is set up. So in other words, the only choices that we're getting are oligarch A versus oligarch B. And that's fundamentally the problem. And so I think that real change, what we're going to do is going to have to happen outside of that. And I've thought that for a long time. I am very supportive, of the labor movement. I think a lot of what we need to do should be around that. I think the fact that Sean Fain and Sarah Nelson, and I'm not sure if it was Sean O'Brien or another union leader, have coordinated their contracts to all be up for renegotiation on the same date. That is the kind of movement we need to see. We need to see yellow vests, people in the streets, because our representatives are not representing us. So we have to represent ourselves. And I think that's ultimately what this is going to lead to. And, I feel like capital is imploding as we speak. The empire is completely imploding. All of our resources are based on military and killing people. We don't take care of our own people. We don't take care of anybody. And that's the problem. We spend more money killing people than helping people. So, when that's your entire industry, you have very limited lifespan. Like empire is coming, like we're watching it come to an end.
Absolutely. And I think about stuff like this all the time. Like the very example that our tax dollars goes into destroying other societies and basically murdering people around the world, and in some cases domestically. But it doesn't go to healthcare. It doesn't go to a jobs guarantee program or things that's going to be beneficial or for the people. And then you hear the other side talking about, we need to get rid of foreign aid in America first. And then you go and say, okay, let's go and do things for the American people. Well, we can't do that. That's socialism. So
right.
What the hell,
Yeah, well, I've come to the final conclusion that capitalism does not coexist with functioning democracy. And I don't need people telling me we're not a democracy, we're a republic. Yes, I know. But I think that capitalism is the complete antithesis of democratic principles. And so I don't see how those things can coexist. And that is really the problem. Like we could keep dancing around it, but at the end of the day, we're having a capitalism problem. And I'm going to argue with you based on MMT. It's not our tax dollars. We need to say our collective resources. Our tax dollars don't get collected for anything, right? This. Okay. So yeah, it's infuriating. And that's by design because they have to keep us desperate in like this fear, this austerity mindset. And it isn't about that. That's why I don't even like people saying our tax dollars are paying for war. No, it has nothing to do with our tax dollars. There's no lady sitting in an office counting all our tax dollars when they come in and then telling us how much we can afford to spend that year. That's not how this works. So, it's the fact that somehow miraculously we do those things, but not the things that matter. And people need to know why that is. And the reason that is the things that matter aren't profitable. And the things that we are doing are what is profitable. We are a military industrial complex. That's it. That's what we do. That's what we make. That's who we are. That is the only thing that we do, as far as like, that's what our country is known for, is making weapons and selling weapons. That's what we do. And so that's where everything's invested in. Everything else has been dumbed down to the lowest common denominator, whether it's agriculture, and like everything else has been completely dumbed down and made into mass product. So the reason we don't have nice things is because it wouldn't be profitable.
Yeah, and they like it this way. I mean, they love the status quo. I mean, and again, you have the politicians who they do have some culture war differences with each other, but when it comes to donor class and everything, they are the same. It sounds like a cliche, but they are the same. And I hear a lot of people on the left talk about, well, it's not about left and right, it's about up and down. Yeah, it is about up and down, but you have to convince those of good faith on the right that what they want is going to be on the left. It doesn't mean they have to buy into every aspect, but if they can just have the class solidarity, realize, it's in their best interest to join the class struggle. That should be the number one aim.
That's what labor does. That's why I love the idea of labor. Like labor, when you're at a union hall or you're on a picket line with the union, you're surrounded by people that voted for Trump, and there's people that voted for Bernie. That is not the common denominator isn't how they feel about gay marriage. Right? Like that's not the common denominator there. And that's not the common denominator that's going to serve in our class war.
Oh, tell me about it. I was a member of the United Food Commercial Workers for 20 years. So I know how those union meetings were. And there was a whole lot of conservatism there. Trust me. And,
we need those people. We need those people in our fight. And that's what the left, or the faux left, the Democrats, that's what they fail to understand, is that we need those people, those conservative union people. Those people are more like us than somebody like Nancy Pelosi. Okay. So those people are in our fight. And this is something that is just not recognized amongst like regular run-of-the-mill Democrats.
Absolutely. And the thing about it is, I was the previous job was unionized, and I had a coworker that was a hardcore Republican and one that was a Democrat. And North Carolina being a right to work state, the Democrat did not belong to the union, hated unions. The Republican was a union guy. And he hated my politics, but we got along. And I told him, I said, I can say his name. I said, James, you don't even know it, but you're actually serving my political agenda. What you're doing right here. You're pushing socialism more than you realize. And he would just tell me to F off. Affectionately tell himself off, but the other guy, I mean, he was the one that gave me a hard time for choosing Bernie over Hillary, and again choosing Bernie over Elizabeth Warren, or choosing Bernie over Biden last time round. So, of course, it was an improvement, him going from Hillary to Elizabeth Warren. I guess that is an improvement. So
that is an improvement. It's a slight improvement.
Yeah, it is a slight improvement.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and not a big improvement because she backstabbed them in Massachusetts.
Oh, as soon as she accused him of being sexist, that was when I was officially completely done with Elizabeth Warren. Like, I had already not been thrilled with some of her political stuff, and I'd already not been like, I was not a fan of hers to begin with. But when she accused Bernie of being a sexist, when in fact he asked her to run in the first place in the original, I just, no. I that was it. I lost any amount of respect for her, and that was it. Yeah.
Well, always, whenever I put her on a thumbnail or something, there's always a snake reference there for her.
As
Yeah,
well, there should be.
yeah. So just uh, do I even need to make the comparison? I was telling one of my coworkers last night about Debbie Wasserman Schultz. I told her about
Mm.
this show today, and I was telling her about how horrible Debbie Wasserman Schultz is. So,
Yeah.
um, would it be okay if I describe Debbie Wasserman Schultz? How I would describe Debbie Wasserman Schultz? Okay, I'll
Sure.
describe. Okay, I said if you crossbreed a human-sized raisin with Chelsea Clinton at the age of 70 with a very deformed cocker spaniel dog with ramen noodle hair, you will have Debbie Wasserman Schultz.
That's so good. It's good, although it does sort of make me feel slightly bad for Chelsea Clinton, but it is it's definitely a good visual. Debbie's just I feel like when you're evil on the inside, it permeates how you look. And I've said it a lot of times, like if Debbie were a really good person and a kind person and a generous person, then I can guarantee you she wouldn't look like that to us. We wouldn't see her that way. She might look plain. She might look, might not be like so pretty or whatever, but she wouldn't look so serpentine, right? Like she wouldn't have that look. So it really is what's evil on the inside looks evil on the outside. That's what I think.
Definitely, just scorch earth evil she is.
Yeah.
So, yeah,
Yeah. She really does believe that she knows better. She does. She believes that she knows what's best. She's extremely bigoted. She's a bully. I could tell people locally, how she stays in power. People are like, who keeps voting for her? The problem is that she owns labor down here. She threatens people. She actually blackmails them. She bullies them. She threatens people. She threatened a woman down here to take away her 501c3 status because this woman allowed me to be in the Juneteenth parade. So there's always like, she just rules by bullying. And, eventually that stops working because a lot of those people die off and the young people are not having it. So we'll see. But I think, this general, the Republican got within 8 points of her, which is the closest that it has ever been in this district.
yeah, yeah. Just I think she's having issues with Tulsi Gabbard for director of national intelligence, for what I hear.
Well, she hates Tulsi. You know why? You know why she hates Tulsi. Right? I
Yeah,
mean, so for people who don't know, Debbie was the chair of the DNC. Tulsi was the second in command of the DNC. Tulsi saw how they were cheating Bernie Sanders. Tulsi called it out and resigned. And Debbie Wasserman Schultz and Hillary Clinton have had a vendetta against Tulsi Gabbard ever since. That's basically the gist of it. And I do not agree with Tulsi's politics usually. Every once in a while on civil liberties, but for the most part, I don't agree with Tulsi. But she does speak truth to power, and she has been right on many occasions, this being one of them. And the other thing she did was knock Kamala's knees out from under her on the debate stage, also pissing off Hillary Clinton. And Debbie is Hillary's number one minion. So anything about Tulsi to me with her, she could call her a Russian asset and all this ridiculous stuff. No, Tulsi embarrassed them. Tulsi embarrassed them. That's what it comes down to. So they hate her.
yeah. The other day I was watching Due Dissonance, and Russell was explaining Tulsi and Joe Rogan, but basically was saying that that these I'm paraphrasing him. These liberals kind of push the Joe Rogans and the Tulsi Gabbards further and further to the right. Basically, they have no incentive to work with the left because of what some of these people did to them over the years. And she was my second choice in 2020 when.
She was my second. I would say same. It was Bernie then Tulsi.
I wanted them to team up. I wanted a Bernie Sanders Tulsi Gabbard ticket because we needed an economic socialist, social democrat, basically somebody who would give us social democracy or democratic socialism at home, and somebody who can do a good anti-imperialist foreign policy abroad. And I was just like, this complements, they complement each other.
Yeah.
And again, both of them are not perfect on every issue, but they're going to be like the closest thing to what I would want in in a um in a ticket. And I'm not
Yeah.
really into identity politics, but if ticket would have taken place, it would have been the most diverse ticket that the Democratic Party would have ever had. You'd have had a secular Jewish man, Bernie Sanders, and you had a Hindu Samoan woman, Tulsi Gabbard. So I mean,
Yeah. But here's and Tulsi, obviously I know she's wrong about Israel, and on a lot of things she's got an Islamophobia problem, which I also do think is tied to the Hindu.
mhm.
So there's definitely some stuff there with that. But I will say this about Tulsi, and I have respect for her. She's capable. Tulsi presents as capable, formidable, and capable. Kamala presents like an idiot, like the drunken lady, like at carpool that, is pissed that she has to pick up her kids in the afternoon or whatever. Like Tulsi comes off as formidable. I can see Tulsi meeting with people like Putin and them taking her seriously. Kamala comes off like a bimbo. That's the difference. So I don't necessarily love Tulsi, but she's competent and qualified. That's how I feel about Tulsi.
Yeah, and so I just think that some of the culture war politics on the right, some of the like teaming up with Matt Walsh, that was very offensive and all that. I mean, it was a backlash. It was a way to,
Yeah.
and I just, it broke my heart seeing that, because it was just like, no, this is not what I bargained for.
No. No,
Yeah.
she definitely on that end, but I think she always was conservative, to be honest with you. I think she always had that. I think that we presumed a lot of things about Tulsi based on her support of Bernie Sanders. And I think that, and I know I did. I know that, like, I presumed if she supports Bernie, she's progressive. I don't know that Tulsi was ever progressive. And again, I'm not saying that like in a judgy way. I'm just saying I think that's why people felt so disappointed, is they had sort of put something on her that was never really there in the first place. And then when that didn't pan out, they were like so turned off. And, really she is scorned. She's like a woman scorned because of what she did to Hillary and Debbie. And that is why she is like a permanent pariah to anybody in the Democratic, establishment.
I was in Ireland when when on vacation when that whole Russian allegation took place, and the person I was with, she was getting mad at me because I was like really furious, just like, fucking Hillary,
Yeah.
I was, because I would just, I mean, I was almost ruining the vacation because I was an unhinged Bernie bro at that time, but I was kind of a Tulsi bro as well too. And I was just like, I was just really just, I was just like, again, I projected a lot of leftism in Tulsi that wasn't really there to begin
Yeah.
with. Yeah.
Yeah.
And I thought of her as basically Abby Martin. She was like Abby Martin for the mainstream. That's kind of what I sort of view her as.
I can see it, but then you've got the Islamophobic portion, and Abby Martin is pretty staunch with justice. So, but yeah, I have no ill will towards Tulsi, and I think like I don't think she's going to get confirmed. I don't.
That's why I think that Trump appointed her for that position, because it is a pivot toward the faction of MAGA, the small little faction of MAGA that they're anti-war, because they do exist. I mean,
Oh yeah.
they're out. See, MAGA is not. There's not one MAGA. There's some MAGAs that, you got your alt right and alt-light MAGA, they can fuck off. You got that core that they were Ted Cruz supporters in 2016, and they were cheerleading Bush and Cheney during the Bush Cheney years. The people who sit there and watch Fox News from the day they get up, from the time they get up in the morning to the time they go to bed. These old folks that thought Rush Limbaugh was correct about everything. Those folks can fuck off. But you have people who are maybe some of the remnants of the Ron Paul movement, and maybe just some people who just weren't political before that came in there, and they're kind of populist and anti-war, and that part I don't have a problem with. I can deal with them. I can deal with them. And
I don't mind conservative people. I don't. Like, I know conservative people. I can hang with conservative people. That's not a problem. Everyone's entitled to their thoughts, their opinions. And the problem with people that are your typical Democrats is that they feel like if they can't convince you that they're right, then they don't want to talk to you anymore. They can never just talk to people that they don't agree with. They have to cancel them. And that is just not, it doesn't work. This is not working in civilization. So I have no problem with conservatives.
Yeah, same here. I remember in 2008, there was some people talking about Dennis Kucinich and Ron Paul teaming up. I'm saying I could go along with that.
Yeah.
Yes, I was a Dennis Kucinich supporter back going almost back 20 years. I can't believe we're going back to 2 decades.
Yeah. And, and I've said that about Rand Paul as well. Like, there's tons of things I don't agree with him on, but I have respect for him. He is the only other senator besides Bernie that doesn't meet with lobbyists. He does not take their money, and he represents his people. So, and I do think that there's a certain libertarianism that we're talking about. It's like that sort of old school Republican vibe, when Republicans were actually truly conservative, and conservative meant conserving the environment and conserving money. It actually meant those things. And so real places that are full of real conservatives, this is a reason why the red states like Idaho have the best environmental realities for people and the least problems, because those are conservative people. They conserve. And I think that we need to not look at that as a negative thing. But again, it's the labels. Labels don't even mean anything anymore. I've had somebody tell me they're so conservative, and I'll be like, okay, well, what does that mean? And I'll say, do you think we should all have health care? Oh, yeah. Do you think, I go through this list of things, but this person refers to themselves as conservative. And yet I just put forth 5 very populist, what we would call leftist policies that they would fully support. So this is the problem with labels.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I would tell, I have a friend of mine that lives in Montana. He's a minister. He's a UCC minister, mainline Protestant minister, very progressive. And he's sort of he sort of reminds you of a what's the name of that artist, Rockwell artist, the one that did the America painting of America.
Oh, you mean American Gothic?
Yes.
You're talking about the painting American Gothic. I forget who it was. I don't think it was Norman Rockwell. It was I don't think it was Norman. Did Norman Rockwell paint American Gothic? Yeah. I'm not sure.
Well, anyway, he's about our age, but he's sort of reminds you of somebody from that kind of a painting, but very progressive and all of that. And I was going somewhere with this. He oh my God, what was I going to say about him?
He's conservative. He's progressive. He's a minister in Montana.
Conservative sensibility. He said, I have 1950s conservative sensibilities. And, and that's basically what I was trying to say. He's very progressive, but he carries himself very conservative. In spite of being gay, he carries himself in a very conservative sort of, way. And yeah.
That's what I mean. I think when we take away the label, if we had no parties and we just voted on issues, we would actually have a closer resemblance of what's, a democracy, obviously, that we have this republic, so we can't do anything that way. But that's the problem, is the political theater has interrupted the actual functioning of democracy. And that's the problem. But I think that if we voted on things like healthcare directly, and we voted on things like that, it would pass every time.
Yeah, they don't want these ballot initiatives. They try to fight against a lot of progressive ballot initiatives
Oh
because
yeah.
they know a lot of it would pass. I mean, I know down in Florida, marijuana and reproductive rights were almost
Almost.
passed, but they had to go. What was that? 60% of the vote or
We need
something?
60% here.
Yeah, and I was confident. I was like so looking forward to this. It'd be like, I want to see the look of anger and rage at Governor DeSantis' face when marijuana is legalized, when and reproductive rights are protected. I just want to
We're
see
not
him
so
rage.
lucky. We're in a bad way here right now. Like, I honestly, the only thing I can hope at this point about, not so much the cannabis law, because quite honestly, it wasn't great legislation. It wasn't like, we'd be better off with better written legislation. That one would have sort of allowed for an oligarchy of cannabis. But anyway, but the women's reproductive, the abortion rights thing, I don't know how any people with girls would want to move here. So the only thing I can hope at this point is that it helps stifle some amount of our population increase, because I think Florida gets 1,000 new people a day or something like that. It's absurd. So the only upside to me of that being our law, because we essentially have an all-out abortion ban. 6 weeks is a full ban. Most women don't know they're pregnant in 6 weeks. So we have a ban. And the idea for me of people with daughters living here, like I wouldn't if I had a choice. I find that very concerning.
Yeah, and it's a funny thing about Florida. Florida, it seems like Florida would kind of contradict themselves, because it seems like some of the more populated urban areas was seen very progressive, but then it's so inherently Republican and right wing throughout the state.
We're very libertarian in this state. It's really purple. I mean, don't forget the same in 2016 when Trump won, we also passed a $15 minimum wage in that same election. So there's a populist purple, and that is most of Florida. And it's very civil liberties, very people keep to themselves. It's rural. That's what people don't understand about Florida. They think of, Miami and Fort Lauderdale and Orlando, but most of Florida is not that. Most of Florida, you might as well be in Alabama. And so it's very rural. A lot of it's very isolated, and it's also very churchy in a lot of cases. And that lends itself to a certain amount of conservatism, but there's still a populism that is here that we do have. But they invested so much money fighting against those two amendments that had they not fought against them, they would have passed. Because I know that the women's, the abortion rights one we got 57%. So whereas, most ballot initiatives pass because most people vote yes on initiatives without even reading them, because people just vote yes. So the fact that it didn't pass really shows you how hard they fought against it. And they did. And both Amendment 3 and Amendment 4 had a lot of advertising, very bad. Like, they were working hard. They were working overtime on those two.
Yeah, and the thing about it is that in places like Missouri, what was it? Abortion rights were protected. I believe wage increase. They voted a minimum wage, and we're talking about the state with Senator Josh Hawley, who's not really all that all that great. So in a lot of red areas, they're actually doing things that would appear to that will appeal to the blue, and just what it is that the Democratic Party, liberal or progressive policies is popular, but what's not popular is what's not popular is the Democratic Party. Because I mean, I look at the Democratic Party and it's just like this empty centrist party that's authoritarian for the sake of being authoritarian. It's like, why? You know?
Well, they're doing the bidding of capital. That's really what this is at the end of the day. I mean, we have both parties are just arms of capital and empire. So it doesn't really matter, which I think more and more people are realizing. And I don't even know if you were to ask a run of the mill Democrat, just anybody on the street who just votes blue, and ask them, well, what is the platform? You know, what are the principles? What do the Democrats stand for? They can't tell you. They don't know. And I don't even think the people like the platform is just a whole big word salad. I don't know if anybody's looked at it. I haven't looked at it in a while, but the last time I even ventured to look at any part of the platform, it was just a giant word salad. And it's nothing. There's no policy. There's no meaningful anything. So that's how can someone get behind that?
Well, I gave up that a long time ago.
Yeah.
Well, the last time I will tell you, I did register as a Democrat briefly in 2020 because I said I was going to vote for Bernie, and I was not
Mm,
going to have anything that was going to stop me. But technically, in North Carolina, you can vote in the primaries as a unaffiliated voter. But I was a registered Green at that time, and so I was like, okay, I'm going to be a Democrat temporarily, so there will be
right.
no problem, no issues right there. As soon as I went and voted for Bernie, I drove right to the Johnson County Board of Elections, hand me that form, and I went and re-registered to the Green Party. I didn't want to be a Democrat any longer than I had to be.
Yeah.
So
I am officially no party affiliation at this point.
yeah, I just think I think it sounds nihilistic. It sounds, what have you, but um, it's got to be taken out into the streets. It's got to be.
Mhm.
We have to have our own media. We have to have our own alternative institutions. What they talk
Yeah.
about mutual aid. To help with if there's ever going to be a general strike.
Yeah. You know, it's all very like apocalyptic, like what we're really looking at. And I don't think like I always think about movies like Hunger Games and The Matrix and these things to try to describe what's going on in the world because it's amazing to me the amount of people that will go to those movies and root for the Rebel Alliance, but in real life they're part of the empire. They don't see the disconnect in what they're doing. But at the end of the day, this is going to really require I mean, I say yellow vests in the streets. I mean, that's more symbolic, but yeah, a general strike, it's going to involve everybody and it's going to have to be, the class war that it is. Because the parties are just a distraction. The parties keep everybody in line from recognizing that this is a class war. That's the whole point of them. It's sort of like religion. It's there to, keep everybody sort of, fighting amongst themselves. But it's not real. It's made up. So I just, as soon as the more people realize that, but the other thing is, I think that more and more people need to get uncomfortable and that needs to happen. And that's another reason why it doesn't like that. I think of Trump as he's the lesser evil because he facilitates that uprising and that revolution in people. Whereas those same people go back to business as usual. They don't pay attention and the same people can get away with war crimes. So it's not, we're better off just like free falling. We need to hit the bottom.
Now, during the Biden presidency, a lot of people were angry to see this, but when Joe Manchin and Kirsten Sinema were being signaled out to be
Right.
put on a spot over their fuckery against Build Back Better. I mean, a lot of people are like, this is outrageous. This is terrible. I said, no, this is awesome. We need more of this. And we need to do this to all these politicians from both parties. We need to go and make them feel like shit. We need to go and put them in a corner. And we need to, I don't mean violent and I don't mean that, but, just annoy the hell out of them. Just to make them sick of it, give them a reason to hate us.
Yeah.
I'm just that angry with these people, and I was like, no, they have it coming to them. When they were doing that, she was officiating over a wedding, and everybody was like, "Oh, poor Kristen Cinema." No, 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 no. The
No,
hell with her. No,
no.
she got paid by Big Pharma, and she promised to go and lower the price of medicine, and then she ended up doing what she did, and she's cozying up with Mitch McConnell, gave him a little affectionate pat on the back, and then did a little curtsy as she voted
Oh
no on
yeah.
the minimum wage increase. Oh, I was angry, angry,
But
angry.
you realize that if it wasn't her and Manchin, there would have been other designated baddies, right? Like this is like professional wrestling. The end result is determined as to what's going to happen. And then they pick and choose who's going to fall on the sword and look like the good guy and the bad guy on whatever particular issue, which is why when we're all praising people for they voted yes on something that had no chance of passing, that's not an accomplishment. And there's a lot of people. So how they vote, it will depend on if it can or cannot pass. So somebody will say, "Oh, I did support that. You saw I supported it. Had it had a real chance to pass, then it probably wouldn't have gone that way." Right? Like that, I am so suspect. I think it's all political theater. And I don't believe any of it. That being said, I agree that these people do not get a moment of peace when they're in public. I think that anybody who is an elected person that is working against the will of the majority should not get a moment's peace when they're in public. That's just me. I think they should have pots and pans clamoring around them wherever they go. I think that they should be interrupted in public places. And yeah, that's how so I absolutely agree with that.
Yeah, and we were talking about Abby Martin a few minutes ago. I think her husband's name Mark Preissner.
Yeah.
Uh, yeah, I don't know if you remember, but like 3 or 4 years ago, George W. Bush was speaking in some area, and he went and got up and he started yelling at George W. Bush, "Apologize, apologize for the million people that died in Iraq."
Yeah.
I mean, and people were like, "Oh, this is so outrageous." No, we need more of that. We need more of
He's a
that.
veteran. That's the thing. He's a veteran
Yes,
for peace.
yes. I think he was a corporal that served in the army in Iraq.
Yeah. I know he served and same as like Matt Ho, who's coming on next week. I mean, anytime we have any of these people like Larry Wilkerson or Dennis Fritz or any of these people that I respect so immensely because, people that serve for something greater than themselves is admirable. But when they see the fallacy in that entire paradigm and they're able to not only acknowledge it, but be able to educate people about it, it's so important. And the people that I know, and we're talking, I mean, Larry Wilkerson served as deputy under Colin Powell, under W. I mean, we're talking about a Republican administration. So these are people that are old school Republicans that are now speaking out against empire. And I find that so incredibly inspiring because it never would have occurred to me that those kind of old school military guys would be preaching against war. And so the fact that there's so many people like that, and yeah, I've not ever met Abby. I would love to. I mean, I'm a big fan, but I do know that her husband served, so I have mad respect.
Let's not forget Scott Ritter.
Oh yeah,
Yes, he's been on my show, I mean, it's interesting to listen to him. I mean,
yeah. I watch Judge Knapp a lot, and I watch. Do you ever watch Dialogue Works?
Dialogue Works.
Dialogue Works. I highly recommend it because Scott, Matthew Ho, Larry Wilkerson, Ray McGovern, that same rotation of people are always on Dialogue Works. So if you want to always get the regular on them, they rotate on Dialogue Works and on Judge Napolitano. Like those same core people kind of rotate those shows.
Now I've seen Judge Napolitano quite a few times, and it's always Scott Ritter, it's always Max Blumenthal, it's always Anya Parampil, and
that's Max's wife, right?
Yes, absolutely, yeah. I saw them both speak. Actually, I saw them both speak at the Rage Against the War Machine back in 2023, early 2023.
That's cool. I actually met Anya at her house. I had connected with Lee Camp, and then he had invited me over to Max's house when I was in DC this was a few years ago, doing the Tim Pool show. And so I ended up going over to Max and Anya's house, and I had never met her. I had met Max before because he had been a guest speaker down here. So that was why I was able to be invited, because he knew who I was in the first place. But that was the first time I met her, and she was lovely. She's lovely. Like, she's sweet and smart. And yeah, I really like Anya. She was really cool.
Yeah. And let's see. Trying to think. Yeah. But the thing about it is that there's a lot of work that needs to be done in our society. Yeah, on the anti-imperialist front, on the economic justice front, and I guess it's going to get better at some point, but you keep asking yourself when.
Only when everybody is uncomfortable. And that's the problem. And that's why Trump doesn't upset me as much, because it facilitates that process. It's like, here's the thing. Have you ever seen a snake shed? Have you ever seen a snake shed its skin? It's this very strange process, and it does happen naturally. But for snakes that are in captivity, sometimes they need help shedding. Sometimes they need help. Sometimes you got to put them with like the cold water, and you got to help, and you whatever. Like, there's a process. We're shedding right now, and it's going to happen. And the longer we prolong it and the harder we make it will just determine how bad it is for everybody involved. So I don't know exactly when we will hit rock bottom, but will we be able to hit that revolt before the complete authoritarianism, before we're taken over by cop cities and the complete shutdown of free speech? What's been going on in college campuses, like, that is the stuff that more people need to be outraged about, but they aren't until it pertains to them.
And that's another.
So how far does it have to go until enough people feel affected to give a shit? That's the question.
Yeah, that's another thing about what's been going on the campuses, because I think that some of the people that were attacked on the campus over the Gaza situation, some of them were not particularly keen on speech, and I bet you that some of them probably had a change of heart on the speech question. And this is why I tell some people on the left that kind of walked away from free speech: you don't know what you're doing when you do this, because it's historically being for free speech has been one of our core values. And I tell people who disagree with me on the left, I said, I am so confident that as a leftist that my core values is superior to what the right wing has to offer, that it could stand on its own two legs.
Exactly.
Yeah.
That's how I feel, which is why, I'm a free speech. Absolutely. I really am. Unless you're calling for imminent danger and harm, like yelling fire, that whole thing. I think you should be able to say whatever you want. You hate Jews, you hate blacks, march up and down the street, show your bigoted self in all your glory, have fun at it. I could not care less. That doesn't bother me. It bothers me to stifle it, that people think it makes it go away. No, it doesn't make it go away. It actually makes it fester in quiet, hiding places. The same bigots are still there. I prefer to know who my bigots are. So, that it's the same thing. People don't want their feelings hurt, but that doesn't mean that it's going to stop. So if you make people stop talking about Gaza on the campuses, that's not going to make the situation stop. So it's this wanting to put your head in the sand thinking. It's wanting to completely control the narrative. And this is definitely worse on the Democratic side than on the Republican side, especially when it comes to all things Israel. They are so much more authoritarian on censorship, I am finding.
And another thing, when I hear people like the Dave Rubins and the Ben Shapiro's out there, and all these people talking about how much they love free speech, and they were cheering the clampdown on free speech on campus, I'm thinking to myself, why don't more people call them out on that?
It's very frustrating, the hypocrisy of it all. And for me, and I, as somebody who has been to a few marches for Palestine. And I'm also a Jewish person. So I can attest that I have not seen any any signs of anti-Semitism anywhere. And I was in the 400,000 person in DC last year. No, I have not seen any anti-Semitism at these things. The only violence that we have seen at any of the Gaza encampments has been from Zionists and police officers, and police officers facilitating Zionist thugs. Just as that's a microcosm for what's going on in Palestine. The only violence that's truly occurring is that by the oppressor. The level of violence in a society is always determined by the oppressor. It is never determined by the oppressed. So it's when people look at things like October 7th, oh, that's so horrible. Well, I would suggest you look at the oppressor and figure out what led to that level of violence. Because it's not determined by the oppressed.
But I tell you one thing, speaking of uncomfortable, it's been beautiful seeing Lindsey Graham getting uncomfortable about the ICJ.
Oh my God. He's so funny.
I love seeing him upset.
Sanction Europe. Like he's going to sanction all of our allies in Europe.
Yeah. And sometimes I use a little reverse psychology on some of these people who want to sit there and cheerlead this genocide. I say you claim to be for Western values, but what Israel's doing runs contrary to Western values when they are doing this slaughter against the people in Gaza. It runs against anything that's considered part of a modern Western society.
It's actually the antithesis of Judaism.
Yeah,
actually, it goes against the Torah.
And that's another thing I tell people when it comes to this sort of thing. If there's anybody that's anti-Semitic, anti-Jewish that's involved, they can fuck off. I have no time for any hatred, but when it comes to a genocide is a genocide, and there should have been a ceasefire a long time ago.
Yeah,
I mean,
it's at this point, that's pretty much all I think about, and it's hard for me, like I said in the very beginning when we started, like it's hard to be around in the regular world, especially where I live. I live in a very Jewish community. There's a lot of Israelis around in this area. And it's very lonely and isolating. And I feel like I don't even want to engage with people because then I come to find out, oh, well, they seem nice until I found out they support genocide. So it's harder and harder to exist in public here.
But I tell you something about this recent election. Another weird thing I noticed about this election, because African Americans, Hispanics, even some Muslims kind of went toward Trump. But the Jewish voters kind of remain in the Democratic camp. And I would have thought that there would have been a little chunk going to the Trump camp this year. Of all years.
Jewish voters?
Yes.
Oh, they are. Let me tell you, and this has been the case for a long time. When I went to the Trump rally down here back in 2020, when I ran the first time, we went there to collect ballot petitions. And so we went to the rally. It was a very wide range of very diverse group of people. But one of the people groups that did stand out were the Orthodox Jews, and they were there in all their glory. So it really would depend on what sect of Jew you're talking about. Now, Ashkenazi, secular, Reformed, or non-religious, non-practicing Jews, they're mostly Democrats. But when you talk about Orthodox Jews or anybody that prioritizes Israel, they have often been Republican traditionally. My cousins that are very Zionist have always been Republican.
Okay.
So I like that. To me is not unusual.
Well, I mean, it was like 75, 77% went to Kamala Harris, which was more or less about the same in each presidential election. They're usually like the second. African Americans are like the most loyal demographics to the Democratic Party, followed by the Jewish voters, and then everybody else. That's usually the way that goes. And so,
well, Jews have tended to be Democrat, which also stems way back to like the segregation. civil rights era. And that has a lot to do. I mean, like, all I could tell you is, like, growing up, my dad was always very clear to me that the same people that don't like blacks don't like Jews. So there's always
It's
been
easy
this
to hand,
sort of,
man.
yeah. So there's always been, like, for me growing up, there was always this sort of like alliance or a kinship with other oppressed people. Not for me personally, because that was, but when my dad was younger, there was still separate bathrooms down here and stuff. So they saw that, and Jewish people were not with that. They were not with that. They were not with the segregation. They were with the civil rights. They were tended to be Northerners, and they also tended down here, and they also tended to be more liberal, also more educated.
And in a lot of the left wing traditions in this country, there's been a lot of Jewish influence on the left, and I don't mean Jewish influence like, oh, Jewish influence, oh, I don't mean like that. But so
we're not all Rothschild. You know what I mean? Like, that's this, and there is that is real, by the way. Like that, the thing that not all conspiracy theories are wrong. You know what I mean? Like, there is value to some of them. It just pertains to such a minute amount of people in the Jewish community. The rest of us come from working people that just were working to make a living. I'm the first person in my family that went to college. So, you know, we're not, yeah, there are wealthy Jews, but most Jews are not those Jews.
Yeah. So, I was going to say, yeah, but Soros, I think, is like the new boogeyman for the right. When they saying Soros, they really mean a certain 3-letter word, I think.
Yeah. I mean, look, there is no shortage of actual anti-Semitism. You know what I mean? Like, that is definitely a real thing. I've seen it my whole life. The problem is conflating it with all Jews and conflating Israel with Jews. And that's what we're dealing with right now. I mean, like, to me, that's the biggest threat to Jews around the world right now is the state of Israel. And people like Benjamin Netanyahu. That is the biggest threat to my safety as a Jewish person in this world.
I would say Benjamin Netanyahu, and I would also say Christian Zionists. They are. I would say they're probably the worst because
like Mike Huckabee,
John Hagee.
Yeah. Oh.
Yeah.
I used to live near Hagee's church when I lived in San Antonio, and we would see him on occasion out, and it's just yeah, he's gross.
Yeah, he's horrible. Yeah, not just gross. Yeah. I mean, homophobic. Secret. He's also his ideology is anti-Semitic. It is, and
they need the Jews to all die, basically.
Anti-Catholic too. Anti-Catholic, and nobody called them out on it in 2008. They called out on Jeremiah Wright, Barack Obama's church in Chicago, but nobody was calling out on John Hagee. I'm like, what about that fat ass? I mean, he
But he aligns with them enough, I guess, on Zionism, so it's worth it. That's why all those people. That's what disgusts me the most about the religious Jews in cahoots with the Christian Zionists. When I'm like, they hate you and want you to go to hell, and like they just need you to be there so that they can have their rapture. They don't like you. They think that you're shit. And the whole thing is just so gross. And I just want the Zionist project to come to an end. And I actually would like for it to take the Democratic Party with it. I want both of those entities to come to an end.
Yeah, somebody got mad at me when I made a similar comment about all the entities coming to an end there. So,
really? Oh, no. Yeah. I think shit needs to just end. Like, when something stops working, it's time to stop doing it. Like when a project is clearly not working and it has failed, instead of doubling down, you got to kind of regroup and think about another approach. Like, that's just how we need to be. And Zionism is a failure. And we need to accept it's a failure. And we need to move on to self-determination for all the people in that area.
Yeah, exactly. And, I think that the country will disappear probably by 2035. And it's going to be
I hope sooner.
and it's going to be bad for everybody in a way, because it's going to be bad for the Palestinians, it's going to be bad for the Israeli, because it's going to end up in massive bloodshed, and Netanyahu is going to be the reason why it happened.
Yeah. You know what's interesting, and I've obviously the past few years I've done a lot of research into that whole region just to really understand, because obviously if I'm going to take a strong stance on something, I need to be able to know what I'm talking about. But have you ever heard the term Greater Syria?
I've heard this term. I think I've heard the term Greater Israel.
Okay, well, yeah, they think there's Greater Israel, but no, the term Greater Syria. And this is something that I came across. I have to leave in a few minutes, but I want to tell you this because it's really interesting. So after World War I, when Britain and France were trying to figure out how to carve up the Ottoman Empire, essentially in that region, and how to do it, they actually conducted a poll amongst different tribes and people in the region. And this region was basically from Israel to parts of Iraq, including Syria, Lebanon, Jordan, the Levant, right? And they actually polled a proportionate number of Jews, Christians, and Muslims. So to be clear, so proportionate to their percentage of the population. And the majority of people by far voted for what would have been known as Greater Syria, and to have that be what their nation state would be. And it would have been this huge chunk, basically from the corner of Iraq over to Lebanon and down. And it would have been Greater Syria. So the Jews, Christians, and Muslims in that region, because those peoples in that region, they're the same peoples. The Lebanese, the Syrians, those are the same peoples. And they voted to have their self-determination and their sovereignty in that manner. But Britain and France looked at that and said, oh, that's too big a chunk of land and natural resources to give brown people in control of by themselves. We can't do that. So they had to carve it up and appoint various kingdoms to monitor the resources, which is what we essentially have now. You've got this king is one of our friends over here in Jordan, and this guy is on the payroll in Egypt. And all of these people are in place to maintain that. But if the indigenous people of that area had had their way at the end of the Ottoman Empire, we'd be looking at Greater Syria. And hopefully for them, it would have been like the most powerful nation. Think about that. Think about what kind of power that would be in terms of natural resources for that region to have self-determination and be a state. And that's what they wanted.
Have you ever, I know you have to go in a moment, have you ever heard of, there was like a Sovietized version of Zionism called Oblast? Are you familiar with that?
No.
It's like a region in Siberia that was set up, that they wanted to set up for the Jewish people to kind of set up as kind of like a Jewish state. And I think that their plan was to turn it into like a Soviet republic.
Well, that would make more sense than Western Asia. Like at this point, to me, I have the two options. One, they should have carved out a portion of Germany at the time and let that be a safe place for all the Jews. Right. Whatever. Right. Like something that would have at least made ethnic sense. Okay. And that should have happened. And at this point, I'm willing to just give them South Florida. Give them South Florida. Let the Israelis all come here. We need to all evacuate anyway and move to higher ground. Just give it to them. They want to come here. Let the Israelis have South Florida. But how, we know the whole story of how they ended up dumping them in the Middle East and putting that on top of all the indigenous people there. But yeah, I found the idea of Greater Syria. And so now when people talk about what should we do with that area and how do we do that, I'm like, Greater Syria. Mm-hmm. But we weakened that area by dividing that area.
And I found out something interesting during World War II, because a lot of people had this notion. And yeah, there is an element of anti-Semitism that exists within Islam, but that wasn't always the case. Like during World War II, in Albania, which is predominantly Muslims, they protected the Jewish population there. For example, a lot of people don't know about that.
Well, the reason that the Jews felt safe going to the Levant is because they were safe there and they were protected there. And there were Palestinian Jews and Lebanese Jews, well, for, all of that, Levant Jews that had been there forever. The original Jews, like as in Jesus. I try to explain this to people, like as best I understand, like we're killing the original Hebrews of the world. We're killing the direct ancestors of the origin of our species. And I don't think people really grasp the insanity of that. Like that, you know, and I'm like, you know, Palestinian Jews, and people look at me like I'm crazy. There's Palestinian Jews. I'm like, yes, Jesus was a Palestinian Jew.
And a socialist
there are
too.
none left in Gaza. There have been none in Gaza for many, many years. But there are absolutely Palestinian Jews, and they were treated every bit as crappily as the Muslims and the Christians by the state of Israel.
Yep. So, yeah, it's a interesting situation.
Yeah.
I did not know about that Greater Syria.
It's interesting, isn't it?
Yes,
like
it
if
is.
they had actually had self-determination before we had to come in and ruin everything. And us, I don't mean America. It was Britain and France at the time, but might as well have been us, empire. And they lost all self-determination in that region. And it fucked over everybody. That's why Syria is always fucked up. That's why Lebanon's always, that whole area has been a mess since then.
Wow.
And they wanted Greater Syria.
I'm glad we had this conversation. I did not know about, I knew about the Balfour Declaration and things of that nature. And you know, I just did not know about what was called a Greater Syria. I know about this Greater Israel map.
That's horrible.
Oh, it's goofy looking.
Oh no, they want what they want. Oh, now they're not even saying from the river to the sea. They're like from the Nile to the Euphrates and shit. Like they're like crazy.
Way down into Saudi Arabia, all the way up into Turkey.
Oh yeah, they're going. They're going. They're delusional.
And I think if I'm correct, I think like maybe parts of Egypt too.
Oh yeah, no, it goes down through the Sinai. It goes basically from portion of Egypt all the way over to Iraq and down to a part of Saudi Arabia, up into Syria and Lebanon. It's insane. And they truly believe that they're entitled to this. They truly believe that.
They ain't going to get it.
Oh no, they're not going to get it. They're going to get what they have coming. And when Iran finally says, I've had enough of this shit, and they decide to level Haifa, that might get them to shut the fuck up, because I think that they have it coming. Quite honestly, I really do.
Well, and you know, he wants a war with Iran so bad.
I know.
Yeah, Netanyahu, and another reason why Netanyahu, it makes me feel good knowing that his ass would get arrested anywhere in Europe.
Oh, yeah. That to me is the fact that they issued those warrants, while yes, there's no real teeth at this moment, is extremely important. And I think that it is definitely more powerful than people realize. It's just not going to be an immediate, they're going to go in and arrest him. But the implications of how that affects global politics is pretty big.
Choose where you fly to, BB.
Yeah, I got to go, Willie. Thank you so much for having me on. And just so you know, I streamed this on my channel too. I've been streaming on my channel. Yeah. So shout out to all my peeps in the chat, because when I'm on someone else's show, I don't be on my show. But so I just want my people to know I see you. I love you guys. Thank you.
All right. And listen, thank you for showing up here again. Absolutely. It's always been a pleasure. Feel
free to again.
Yes, we'll do it again sometime in the near future. And
absolutely,
all the best to your podcast. And
thank you, Willie. Thanks for all the support.
Absolutely. And are you on tonight?
No, we are Thursday with Margaret Kimberly.
Okay, because it's always by chance.
We're Monday, Thursday.
Okay, because one day I remember it was on Tuesday night y'all were on.
Election night.
No, it was another night. It was another
really
night.
There have been occasions depending on things, but we're generally pretty Monday, Thursday.
I know y'all are on like at 9:00 at night. It's just, I guess it just by chance. Yeah. Okay. All right.
It's all good. Well, thanks, Willie.
All right. You take it easy, and I'll talk to everyone here. And all the best.
Bye, guys.
All right. Bye-bye. Okay. That was Jen Perelman. And generational change. So I guess I'll put down the link soon when I get a chance. I did, or maybe I did. I'm not sure. But anyway, I didn't get any sleep. I have Braggland that's coming on at 7 o'clock tonight. So I'm going to I would usually talk to everyone here on the chat line, but I need to eat and I need to get my beauty sleep. So y'all take care. I'll conclude by saying, if you like what you heard, please press like and comment. Comment anyway if you disagree with what I have to say. Feel free to share the content on this channel. As a First Amendment absolutist, it's my duty to inform you to create your own platform and utilize it, because we're the muckrakers of our time. And remember to subscribe to the Willy Bragg Show on all my platforms. And remember to free and pardon Ed Snowden, pardon Julian Assange, free Palestine, free healthcare for all, and free speech. Keep it a thing. So y'all take care. I will talk to y'all later. Bye-bye.